All right. Good evening, everybody. This is the Rockport Zoning Board of Appeals. It is October 12th. Thank you, everybody in the audience, for coming. Thank you for coming on electronically, etc. We have one matter tonight, but first we have a couple things on our agenda to make official, I believe. The first thing is a insert that we forgot is to elect a chair and a vice chair. And I await nominations for the chair.
I nominate Jeff Parker as chair.
Second.
Second. Okay, good. Any other nominations? All right, hearing none, let's vote on Mr. Parker for chair.
Aye.
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 Aye. And any opposed? No. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 0. Shamelessly voting for myself. Now we open nominations for vice chair, and I nominate Bob for vice chair, if I may do so.
Seconded.
Could we include his last name? Bob.
You have a last name?
I do. It's Hall.
It is. Mr. Bob Hall for vice chair.
Second.
Thank you. Any other nominations? Hearing none, voting in the affirmative for Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Yes.
3, 4, 5. You're more of a gentleman than I am. All right. Ryan, is there anything else on the agenda prior to jumping into this?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is an appeal to the zoning board of the planning board's actions on the case involving Hope for the Future and a development on 6 Madeline Lane in Rockport. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to first go to figure out whether the appellants have standing, and that is to say the legal right to bring this appeal. And then if we find that they do, or parts of them do, then we will go on with comments from the public and then presentations from each of the parties. And at this point, I don't think we'll put a 4-minute time constraint on people from the public, and we'll check in with you if you're running over 4 and see how long you could be. And I would say presentations, we won't have a formal time limit on
Generally,
that.
it's like 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15. But if it stretches for a good reason, that's okay by me. Mr. Verbose. So, first of all, the appellants for standing, and I look to Orion and our vice chair, who is an attorney, to guide us through what the parties need to be, what they need to fulfill in order to have standing.
Okay, well, the board will have to determine the standing portion of it. So,
Yes.
review the qualifications for what an abutter is would be one of those aspects, and where they at the planning board meeting is another aspect. So.
All right, so let's jump into the definition of abutter as it pertains to standing.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you do that.
You want me to pull it up?
I do.
All right, we'll pull it up. .302.
First definition of 302.
Do you want me to read it out loud? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, that'd be great, because
Okay.
I'm
An abutting property owner, or an abutting property, any lot which is physically contiguous with the lot in question, even if only at a point, and any lot which is located directly across a public street or way from the lot in question.
all right. And now looking down the personnel involved as appellants.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm Rendell Jones. I represent the petitioners. I would like to address the question of abutters and standing.
That would be fine, particularly if you want to go down and clarify individuals, but why don't you come either to the table or to the podium as you please. And this is Mr. Rendell Jones.
There are a number of cases dealing with the issue of who may be an appellant. And mere fact that somebody is an abutter does not necessarily grant them standing if they're not a party to the original proceeding. And none of the people who have designated themselves as appellants represented here this evening appeared in that proceeding. I might anticipate that someone might say, well, a representative of the homeowners association was there, but a homeowners association is a legal entity and a separate legal person, and the homeowners association has not filed an appeal. And I have some cases here that address this issue.
And then Ryan, do you have an aerial of this or property lines?
We can look at either the tax map or I can pull up another map.
Let's bring up the tax map first. And for some reason, we lost our monitor in front of us.
Would that be helpful?
Yes, thank you.
List of abutters, the formal list of abutters.
Yep.
With the tax map.
And this is coming from you, not from Rendell.
No, it's coming from the
Yep.
application itself.
Right. So,
The other thing I'd like to say that arises in these cases is that simply being in a abutter, and even if you're a party, you have to allege a particularized injury, and nobody alleged an injury in this case. There was some concern, characterization of the petitioner, but nobody argued that there was any injury that might befall them if the petition was granted.
as in your position, are you suggesting that they make that case immediately prior to us doing standing, or do we grant them standing on other reasons and then ask about their particularized injury?
That had to happen at the planning board, not here. And since you're sitting here as an adjudicatory body, there's no de novo hearing here, so there's no opportunity to present more evidence. You're totally reliant upon the record that was established
Absolutely. Yeah.
at the planning board. So there's, in my judgment, there's nothing to be done here except to determine that they were not parties and that they did not allege an injury, and therefore they have no standing. Having no standing, they can't appeal, and the matter should be dismissed. End of story.
Okay. And for the audience, normally, and I'll get to you in a second, normally when somebody's at the podium, we don't necessarily have a back-to-back. We absorb a back and forth, excuse me. We absorb what they had to say. In this case, Rendell's fulfilling a particular responsibility to his client, and we'll let the other folks to address that same issue. So this is perhaps a touch premature in the way we're going to do things, but you're bringing up points that we need to consider. Yes, please.
Just for clarification, could you state again who you are representing, who is your client? I didn't quite get that when you first.
I am representing the petitioner in the original application for a
Thank you.
permit.
Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions of Mr. Jones? All right, thank you for that input. Do the appellants want to address that particular point of our process of determining standing?
Yes, yes, very much so.
And do you want to go there, or do you want to?
I'll go over, I'm told.
You can sit and use the microphone. It's fine. You take your notes.
First of all, let me say that
And if you could just introduce yourself, that'd be great.
my name is Anthony Murray. I reside at the Sea Light Lane neighborhood. I am named appellant. My wife, who's here tonight, also is a named appellant. I can get to the point quickly, I think, that Mr. Jones is raising. But I do want to say a couple of things about process, if I may. Mr. Jones has presented the board and me with two Superior Court cases, one 2003, one 2007, which I'm seeing for the first time tonight. I would have appreciated an opportunity to look at them before tonight's hearing. That's process. In terms of the issue itself, this is a case in which the two immediately abutting property owners are part of this appeal. They've signed the appeal, and they were well represented at the. Are you able to hear me, Ms.?
I can hear you fine. I'm wondering whether, where you're going. Let me have you back up just a little bit.
Okay.
And say, if you could address only what Rendell said in terms of our process, and then we'll allow you lots of time to get into the whole narrative.
Okay. I'm getting to the point
Yeah.
of, I thought that was his point, that there's a lack of standing, and I'm trying to address that point. If
Please, thank you.
I can do it here or do it later.
No, let's do standing now, because that's our first process point.
Okay, so as I started to say, the two immediately abutting owners are parties to this appeal. To be precise, Timothy Kaloran is one of the immediately abutting owners, and by immediately abutting, I feel compelled to put that adjective in there because the main cases talk about abutters who really do not own adjacent properties, so it gets a little bit fuzzy when they do, but these are immediately abutting property owners. Map 10, Lot 75 is the property on the easterly side of Route 1. Owned by Mr. Kaloran. And an entity called 580 Commercial LLC is the owner of of Lot 119, Map 14. The members of that LLC include Patrick Kaloran, who is here tonight, Catherine Kaloran, who just walked back into the room, I believe. All three of those individuals are parties to the appeal. Now let's break down the question of standing itself. Mr. Jones is correct that mere ownership is not enough. It does not establish standing. But he correctly points out that in addition, a person seeking to be given standing must show that he or she participated from the start of the case and articulated, in this case, objections from the start of the case. And he or she must show a particularized interest. Now, I don't know how our Kaloran family could have participated any earlier than they did. One of them filed a lengthy and frankly rather thoughtful objection on the day before the hearing occurred on July 28th. That was forwarded to Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas made it a part of the record. It is a part of the record. At the hearing, Kate Kaloran, who is one of the equity holders in 580 Commercial, was the first to her feet when the public comment portion of the meeting began, and she articulated at considerable length why she, and speaking for the other members of her family as well, opposed the application. One other member of the family has filed a letter of objection that is part of the case, part of the record in the case. What is their particularized injury? I would refer this board, frankly, to the statements of the Kalorans that are part of the record, as well as to the oral presentation that Kate Kaloran made on the occasion of the hearing on the 28th of July. She said, among other things, this will affect a substantial modification of this 907 district. This is something unlike anything that is in, and I'm paraphrasing her here, anything that is currently in the 907 district. Why was that so? Well, she said, it's not just a residential use, it's also a service use. And she pointed out that we really don't know what the detail of the services is. We're not told. She was right about that. The most we have on that issue, she hadn't seen, or at least she didn't report whether she'd seen it, but it wasn't part of the application. It was not part of the application that was before the board on the 28th of July. Now, the other thing Mr. Jones mentioned is that the objections that were advanced by the president of the Homeowners Association were ineffective.
And by name, that was?
That was an individual named Mur Doucette, D-O-U-C-E-T-T-E. He was the second to the podium following Kate Kaloran. And he was, well, first he pointed out that he heard about the hearing that morning. And no one in that group of objectors had more than, I think, something like 10 days of notice by the time they actually received whatever they were sent in the mail. But he pointed out that he was just hearing of this, that there were a number of members of the Sea Light neighborhood who were concerned. They had been hearing that this project that had been in planning for some year and a half, they were hearing about for the first time. There were concerns that I think we would all recognize as reasonable concerns about safety. There were concerns about use. There were concerns about property protection, about personal protection. All of those were expressed in the letters that were filed with the planning board. I don't know about this suggestion that Mr. Jones makes that the president of a neighborhood association doesn't have standing to speak, or not standing to speak, but standing to bring in the neighbors as aggrieved parties for zoning purposes. I would be very, and I haven't read the two cases that he's given us, but my impression is that that would hold concerned neighbors to far too high a standard, and it is not reflected in the case, that highest standard is not reflected in the cases I have seen and become familiar with in the last month or so. I think that the comments of Mr. Doucette, the letters that were submitted by individual members of the individual homeowners and that are in the record, Dr. Levine's record letter, for example, all point in the direction of some genuine interest and some genuine and cognizable reason to express objection. So I would say, in addition, that going back for just a moment to the immediately abutting owners, I don't know what more they could possibly do, both in terms of participation or in terms of aggrievement to qualify for standing in these cases.
So it's your contention that everybody on that list has sufficient standing? Is that what you're saying?
I feel very uncomfortable sitting
Well, I'm sorry, 14 names
yeah,
listed as under Exhibit A appellate's list.
right. I'm saying this, that we think that there is standing by virtue of the presence of the immediately abutting owners. And were we to actually present evidence on the other owners, on the Sea Light people, for example, and the people down south the streets, to the south of the development, I think we could establish standing on behalf of those folks as well. But we don't need to. The cases are very clear. I can. These cases would be known to any person who has looked at the law in this area in recent years. Indeed, they would be known to this board because they were cited by Judge Maloney in the Friends of Rockport consolidated cases. What Judge Maloney did was to say that if we have one person in a group who has established standing, and if all people in the group are raising no more issues, no different issues than are being raised by that one person with standing, then we don't go beyond that. We have standing established, and the process should go on. That's the Friends of Rockport case at.
Since we were involved in that, we do remember that.
Okay.
Are you representing that entire group of 14 on?
I'm speaking for all of the group. Yes.
Okay. And if this board finds that some people in particular do not have standing yet, others do, as you say, we go forward, will you then be formally representing those people that remain?
That will be up to them, but I should think so.
Okay, thank you. Do any board members have any questions?
Well, just to clarify,
Mr. Murray?
Judge Maloney's decision applies here. From what, the decision that he was just reading from the previous case applies here. We need one person with standing,
Oh, we do, yeah.
and they need to be an adjacent landowner. And,
From this board's perspective, adjacent landowners are the safest bet.
okay, and you're saying that's the Killerans?
That's correct. The Colorans are.
Killoran, excuse me.
The Colorans are all of the abutting owners. There aren't any more immediately abutting owners on the eastern side of Route 1. They are the whole lot of them.
They're 508 LLC.
508 and the,
And then we need to establish that concerns were raised by that party
That makes
in
them
the first
particularly.
planning board meeting.
Yeah,
And I have it in the minutes right here that she did.
yeah.
Ms. Killoran expressed concern.
Okay.
That sounds like standing to me. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, well, you can reiterate that or just refer
Okay,
to it when
that's
we
it.
get
That's
to
me
board
reiterating.
discussion. All right, I want to get this monitor going so that we can,
Can you just identify the exact parcels that have standing? So
yeah, that's why I wanted the graphic up
Okay,
here rather than
alright.
looking over
They're
there.
on that
I
list that I
can't
gave you,
find it
Jeff.
on
Yeah.
the map here.
They're identified on that graphic.
Let me hand this to Orion whilst I try and get this to work again. Here we go. Oh, there it is. All right. And if you could do that, then it would look like to me, because we'll. We have a monitor here that shows us what's on there, but you can't see around the corner. And it's busted. There we go. There we go. Did you get those names?
Yeah, no, I have that. I need the board to state.
Oh, yes, yeah, when we make the motion, yeah,
Yes.
thank you. All right, so having heard the two representatives on their views on standing and knowing what our recent history has been, does anyone want to make a motion with respect, and I'm working off of Exhibit A appellant list, which is 14 entities, total of 15 names. Do we want to either include or eliminate some of these people?
Jeff, there's an alternative way of looking at standing that they have in some land use cases, and that is, if we go back to the minutes of the meeting of the planning board, they didn't specify at the end of their meeting, or in their minutes rather, exactly what the use would be at the end of this process if the facility was actually changed over. The appellants are making an argument here that, in fact, the use would be a congregate housing. And congregate housing is not allowed in District 907. And so you have to question, well, who has standing to protest a use that's prohibited by the zoning code? And I think the answer is people who live in District 907.
So you're expanding the sense of adjacency.
Yeah, because they're saying, we live in a district that doesn't allow this particular type of use, plausible use. I'm not saying that it is. They're alleging that it's a congregate housing. And if they're in fact correct, then it's a housing use that's not allowed in that district, and that anybody in that district should be able to protest that.
Terry?
I think that's premature, because that's one of the things, when we get to that part, that we're going to determine whether it's congregate housing or something else, such as multifamily and whatever. So I don't see what that, maybe I'm not getting it, but I don't see, I think that's premature to the simple issue of standing, which one of the things that's easily determined is, are they abutters? And 3 of the applicants, as noted by Mr. Murray, are direct abutters. They're listed on that schedule. And that would be Patrick Killeran, signatory, Timothy Killeran, signatory, and, was it 580?
Catherine.
Catherine.
Yeah.
Who
580
is in
commercial.
essence Catherine, so 580 Commercial LLC, and you have the map and lot numbers there.
Yeah. And I,
So to me, we need to do that first,
right,
and then this is a totally separate.
No, I'm not suggesting that. We would,
Okay.
that we would find that this is congregate housing.
Right,
This is what these people are alleging. And
true,
we're not-
that is the
this
argument.
This is not a finding for us to make. What I'm suggesting is that there's a gap in the use that was found by the planning board. The planning board needs to fill that gap before we can make a judgment.
But we have to determine whether the moving parties right now, as of this moment, any have standing, and whether they're properly represented, and apparently they did, or at least one of them attended the prior planning board. That was something raised by Attorney Rundle.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I would be happy for the board to make a vote on that particular, on the abutting issue.
okay.
Yeah.
Before we do that, let me just point out that the particular proceedings that we have, we will not be determining whether, this is my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we won't be determining the, any aspect of this. We'll be determining whether the zoning board has sufficient information and process to
I
do
I
that.
do understand.
So it's not a de novo meeting.
Right,
Where we would ourselves entertain the argument that it was congregate housing.
You misspoke. I think you meant the planning board made that decision.
Yeah.
correct.
Any other questions before we have a motion? I think you're about ready to make a motion. Do I understand that?
I move that we find that the three abutting landowners have standing.
Second? Question mark?
Well, I think we should name them in the motion.
Yep. So, the three abutting landowners, comma, Joseph Killeran, Timothy Killeran, and Catherine Killeran.
Patrick, isn't it?
No,
Patrick.
it's Timothy, Patrick, and Catherine.
I'm sorry. Let's go back over. So Timothy, map 10, lot 75. Catherine Killeran,
I think
508,
that should be 580 Commercial LLC, because there might be other ownership in it.
508.
508, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so Catherine Killeran,
580. It's printed as
580.
580.
Really?
Thank you.
Just 508 on this one.
And then also Patrick Killeran of 580 Commercial LLC. Have standing by virtue of adjacency.
Did we identify the actual three maps?
We
and
got one
lots
of the
correctly?
maps, which,
There's three properties,
yeah. So,
regardless of ownership.
so Timothy is map 10, lot 75. You got that as I verbalized it. 508 Commercial LLC,
580.
580, thank you very much. Can someone come up with a map and lot of that?
Right there.
I can't see that
I
small.
can't see it either.
I had it a second ago.
I think it's right on that paper, Jack. Right here, here's your map and lots, right here. So this one, 14,119, 10, lot 75, and
But there's nothing there that says that that's.
nothing there for 580.
Right. And we knocked Joseph out. 7501.
But I thought 580, I looked these up and I thought 580,
Was adjacent? Well, I think we all agree that 580 is
580
adjacent. We just,
commercial behind it?
Say again?
Is 580
Go to
commercial?
the List of abutters you'll find on the application itself.
Yeah, I have that. They don't list the parcel number.
Map and lot number.
119, 75, and whatever that one is that comes right up,
Right here.
the apex contiguous.
That's the
That's the campground.
campground.
Right, that's not Killeran?
No.
No.
No, that's owned by somebody different?
Okay, so it looks like we've only got two Killeran properties. Lot 75 and 119?
Correct.
580 LLC is Catherine and Patrick are owners of that.
Two owners, one lot.
Ah,
You got,
Thank
that's
you.
how you get three owners and two lots.
so we've got two abutting properties
Okay,
with subset multiple owners,
all right.
all under, all Killeran. Okay.
That was about the longest motion we've had in a while.
Was that a motion?
And Bill, you seconded that?
I did.
Discussion on the motion.
Do we need to specify who raised concerns during the meeting to establish standing? Because in that case,
Well,
it
it's-
says Ms. Killeran.
It's a separate part, and I personally, I see the rules as exclusionary, and this motion can go forward by virtue of adjacency if this board
Yeah.
finds that, so I don't think that that's gonna be an issue. And any legal minds can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so in voting for the motion, 2, 3, 4, 5-0. Okay, so the portions of the people on the list of appellants we find have standing, so that motion can go forward. At this point, the next three things that we will do, again, catch me if I'm wrong,
Go for it.
is to have public comment, and then is to have presentation by the appellants, and then we have presentation by the defendants for the people going for the permit, for lack of a better word. And at that point, when those are done, then the board goes into deliberations. So, this is now time for public input on this matter. And public input is not just about standing, it's about the whole appeal. So anyone would like to come up to the podium and express their thoughts, questions, et cetera, about the appeal.
As a point of order, can I just make it clear?
Particularly if you make it clear at the mic.
Can I make it clear for those persons who may wish to speak that this is not a time to offer new evidence, that the issues to be addressed are whether or not the planning board conducted its proceeding in the manner in which it was required to conduct it, and whether there was substantial evidence to support their decision. It's not an opportunity to discuss the matter generally.
Good point.
It will be our job to apply that structure to our decision. I'm going to give people 4 minutes to talk about the project and their support or otherwise for it. Bill, were you about to say something?
Nope, I'm good.
Anybody else?
No.
All right, so anybody from the audience who wants to discuss specifically whether the planning board of appeals had sufficient information, or if they want to speak generally about the project, will entertain either. Or against the project. You're all here for a reason, is it? And does anybody find my directions confusing?
Just to clarify, we can speak in favor
You can speak
Or
in
against?
favor or against or neutrally.
speak to the appeals board decision.
Absolutely, we're here to hear you. Some of us have been well supped. And did you,
All good. What do I need to say in terms of my
just
name?
please just introduce yourself and.
I'm Melanie Herring. I'm a resident of Rockport in the Village. I'm just here to offer my support for the project. I think what the project offers is deeply needed in our community. I think from what I've seen, the work that they do at the Hospitality House is exemplary, and I think it would add a great, significant benefit to our community. And I'd really hate to see this not pass based on the objections of two abutters. Thank you.
Thank you. I guess I'm not as clear as I should be.
Hello, I'm Joan Welsh. I live on C Street in Rockport. I'm here also in support of this project. It's my understanding that the planning board did their due diligence and that this was adequately approved. I would also just say housing, especially for low-income people, is a huge issue in our state, actually in our country. And this is the absolute kind of program that's needed to move forward to address a very, very serious problem. This program, as I understand it, is well supervised. People are vetted. They're not dangerous. They're not lawbreakers. They're not drug users. If the current concerns, as expressed by Mr. Nuri, are safety, use, property protection, and personal protection, I see none of those as being truly serious concerns. So I urge you to reject this appeal and that we can begin to see some good progress made towards helping our people make sure they have affordable housing and move on to having their own year-round permanent housing. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Elizabeth Stevenson, and I live at 30 Spruce Street in Rockport. And I didn't come prepared with notes because I wasn't sure I was going to be able to say anything tonight. So I really just wanted to echo, remind me your name? Melanie and Joan's comments and say I fully support what they said and agree this is such a huge need for our community and just nationwide. And this is the kind of thing we should be supporting. And if not here, then where? That's how I feel about this. And so I've been so impressed. I'm a supporter of the Knox County Homeless Coalition. I've been so impressed with their work. I attended their meeting. They have everything clearly thought out and really well planned. And I feel like the issue of safety, the people who are lacking safety and security are not ourselves for having the people in the community. It's the people who are without housing and secure housing that are facing issues of safety and security, not us. So I would, again, urge you to reject the appeal, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Stevenson. I also live at 30 Spruce Street. My role in the community is I'm one of the local pediatricians, and see a lot of young families who don't have housing or struggle with housing. And it's a huge burden for those kids to grow up with unstable housing. I can think of a handful of kids off the top of my head who don't have a stable place to put their head at night, and they're couch surfing, and it's really hard on their families. So I greatly support the Knox County Homeless group setting this up.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Agana. I am a citizen of Rockport and a chief medical officer for Penn Bay and Waldo hospitals. I completely agree with what's been said before me. Affordable housing is a crisis. This project helps address that as well as connect people with services they desperately need. So I'm fully in support of this project and hope you also move forward. Thank you.
I'm Bob Jackson. I live in Rockport. I've heard people speak about the need for housing of this general nature, and I agree. I mean, how could anybody disagree that this sort of housing is needed? But I think it needs to be done responsibly. I believe the question before the group here is whether or not among other things, whether or not the zoning board had sufficient information to make the determination about whether or not the activities was within the zoning regulations. I've heard several people say way more about this project in terms of its selection criteria and its programs and so on than I've been able to find out, and I've been trying to find that out. I do not believe, maybe people here know differently, but I don't think there's been a clear statement of who will be in this project, what sort of services will be provided, whether or not schizophrenics, for example, are going to be in the project or not, what sort of rules there are about the behavior of the members of this project. And I'm not saying that they're not good answers to that, but I'm saying that I don't believe anybody's been told those things. So we don't really know, at least I don't believe, the board would be more accurate, I don't believe the board has really been told what is going to go on here. And I think that we can work something out that will be good for everybody if there is a solid understanding of who will be served in what manner within this activity. And that seems to be the thing that's been missing all along. I've not been deeply involved in this, but I've been sort of listening, and there's just been a great lack of clarity of what is going to be done. So I don't think the board has been properly instructed.
Thank you.
Well, I'm the elephant in the room. My name's Rick Bresnahan, and I'm one of the owners of Hope for the Future. I would say that as far as the planning board went, there was 19 criteria that we were asked to meet. We met all the criteria. The part for congregate housing was discussed, and the discussion happened that night. We were not, the reason for specific safety and property concerns weren't addressed was the exact plan was not in place. And you all know what happens when you say something once, you better follow it, so that didn't happen. I will say that the property was chosen because of its remoteness, because of it was 6.1 acres, because the nearest house was 400 feet away. And I was very excited that night when we got there for the opportunity to be able to do 18 affordable housing units. I was shocked and dismayed, obviously, when the first people that spoke were going to have their lives ruined and felt threatened by the project. Certainly, our goal for this project is to provide safety and comfort for the people that are going to be living there. Their objective is not to cause harm, fear, and decrease the opportunities for the people that live in the neighborhood. Certainly, we haven't got to that point because it was brought up after it was approved. And so as we stand now, we're waiting to see whether you think that the planning board did in fact make the right decision. But I can guarantee you, we know that the eyes will be on us, that we're not, the security and property, those fears I feel are unfounded. I've spoken with Randy Gagne as a police chief and asked him has there been instances of this and how, and I also feel there's been a clarification that it's homeless people that are going to be moving in there. This is not a homeless shelter. This is 18 affordable housing units that are being designed for people in a 30 to 80% mean income. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak either for or against or in general?
Am I allowed to say some more?
Let's get to the end of the first round. Okay, 2 other people.
My name's Tom Amory. I live in Beauchamp Point in Rockport. And I would like to speak on behalf of Rick and Ann and the work that they have done in this community for the last 30 years. I've seen them build schools, skating rinks, soccer fields, hospitals, and I can't imagine anybody selecting who would not want them to do something like this. They're impeccable people. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Barney Hildreth. I live on Rockville Street in Rockport. There's quite a bit I don't know about this project, coming to it late, but generally, what I do know, I support. Several people have mentioned the need for housing, and that's real, and it's important for the overall health of the community. I mean, you know, people that don't have a lot of money, they have to live somewhere, and if it's, you know, out too far, it's not really affordable. One of the things I like about it is that existing buildings are being repurposed, and I think that's a bonus. All the site work and all the, you know, positioning of structures like that, they're already there and they've been approved. So I'm not sure financially what the future of office parks is looking like in our COVID world, but I think to have something like this repurposed for good use is a positive thing for the community. So what I do know about it, I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to the bonus round? Come on up.
So I did not mean to disparage anybody, and almost everybody on the pro side of this thing deserves their compliments and accolades and so on. This is, in many ways, a wonderful, wonderful thing. However, the best of intentions are not good, excuse me, not good enough. And it's necessary to have some sort of process and control for selection of people, and an understanding about the various who will do what, both in terms of services provided and the expectations of the residents. For example, are they allowed to bring weapons on site? What about drug use? And I do believe that there's a lot of good here, but I think there needs to be some guardrails. And the thing that surprises me is there's been quite a silence on the guardrails for this sort of thing. And many of these speakers, maybe even all of them, have talked about more substance than I've heard about what is going to go on here. We've not talked about guardrails, though, and we do need some guardrails, in my view. But back to the as I judge, the legal piece of this and the zoning board's decision-making, it seems to me like they should know what this is and whether or not it fits the zoning rules. And it seems to me that there's been a lack of specificity in that regard, even though there's no question that we need things like this, something like this. They just need some guardrails. And maybe that's a judgmental kind of thing, but it also strikes me that when you talk about these guardrails, you're also talking about zoning matters and what in fact is being done or not done within this activity. So, I mean, I hope it goes forward, but I hope it goes forward in a manner that's responsible to the community.
All right, thank you. And last call for comments from the public. Chip, you gotta stay over the back there. All right, so that closes out that part. I'd like to have the appellants speak first, and then the developers. Does the board want to have questions at the end of each of those, or wait until both of those entities are done before we ask any questions and then go into our own deliberation?
Wait till after the first speaker?
Yep. Yep. Okay. All right. So you have the floor for approximately 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. I'd like to start by acknowledging that it would be very hard to find in this room someone who would say that this sort of project, this project of this kind, is sort of innately undesirable. Actually, everyone agrees, I think, that a project of this kind is desirable and is more than that, is needed, has the potential for providing a great deal of good in any community. The question the appellants raise in this case is whether it qualifies for siting in the 907 zone. We think it does not, and that's enough, really, to prevent it from being there. In the absence of some other action, such as the amendment of the zoning ordinance, we think it doesn't belong there because, in essence, it is congregate housing. It's interesting that in both the pre-application and the application itself, the applicant never uses the word congregate housing, but instead talks solely about supportive housing. Supportive housing is not a zoning term. It is not a phrase of art in the zoning field. It's not used as a category of housing in the Rockport ordinance. So it's a question about zoning as far as we are concerned, and it would be hard to find anything in the appeal itself that suggests otherwise. Now, why do we think it is not zoned? Well, a couple of things are worth recognizing. First of all, the 907 zone prohibits the siting of congregate housing in this area. At the same time, congregate housing is a permitted use in Zone 909, and it is a conditional use, that is to say, can be permitted with conditions in zones 901, 902, and 904. So the ordinance contemplates congregate housing. It just doesn't contemplate congregate housing in this area. Now, why is this congregate housing? Congregate housing is a term of art, is a defined term in the zoning ordinance. On page 3.6 of the current, 3-6 of the current ordinance, that definition appears. And the definition is, in essence, the first sentence. Although there are, as I count them quickly here, there are two sentences there. The first is the definition. The second is a kind of elaboration or explanation of what the first sentence is intended to mean. So there are two components to what makes congregate housing. It's a type of multifamily dwelling occupied as a residential shared living environment. Now, those are the things you need. A multifamily dwelling occupied in a certain way. The second sentence gives examples of what can help to describe a congregate housing facility, but it is not a list of mandatory items. It is a description that is intended to help people understand the first sentence. Now, even so, this proposal satisfies not only the first sentence, but it satisfies most of the second sentence. It is, for example, it includes small individual apartments combined with shared community space. No one would argue that it doesn't. It has, and this one there would be argument on, it does have shared dining facilities. I'll get to that in just a minute. We don't know, no one's ever told us whether it has housekeeping services, but presumably the common areas are serviced by somebody. Well, we don't know, because the services haven't been described in any detail, whether it has personal care and assistance for its members, for its inhabitants. We do know that it has, that it offers various kinds of services to them, we do know, because it's on the record and been specifically stated here several times on the record, that it provides transportation assistance and specialized shared services. Now, that is to say, services that are shared by people living in the community, but shared with others. Now, if you read carefully the documents in the case that have been filed by the applicant, by the developer, you'll see there's a progression in the description of this use from a fairly specific stage of describing what was going to be what was going to be happening here, to a more and more oblique and obscure description. I think the best description is the one that is on in the pre-app, and was drafted, if we can rely on what we're given, by the coalition itself. Can you put that statement?
Yeah, which?
This is the statement of purpose, I believe it's entitled.
You said it was on the pre-application?
It's in the pre-app, yeah.
In what page?
The page is not numbered on the document. If you'll just give me, keep going. There it is. Statement of intention prepared by the coalition itself. Now, this is the earliest of the indicators of what is going to be there, and it's dated April 28th of 2022. This statement does not appear in the final application. This statement and much of what it contains was dropped. And I think the problem that someone discovered with this first statement was that it sounds an awful lot like congregate housing. I'd like to refer you to some particular provisions. I'm going to have to go up there because I can't seem to find my copy of it. Could you scroll down just
And if you could just, can you do it from the podium thing so the recording can hear it?
Sure, sure. But if you could go to the top of that page, Ryan, please. There, that's good. So the first thing we have there is the assertion in the first and second line that this is to be a safe, welcoming, affordable housing community with integrated support services for residents. And it talks about a innovative design and other things. In the second paragraph, some of the numbers are given, that there will be 18 units and 45 individuals living there when the place is fully populated. The last sentence there, it says the plans also describe designated spaces for health, wellness, and community services. Community services. Now that phrase is ambiguous. Is this the community of 48 or 45 individuals, or is this the external community? When this came up at the planning board hearing, the architect first indicated that no, the services would be available only to the residents of the community, of the housing units, only to those 45 individuals. That answer given by the architect was endorsed. Look at the film, at the video, you'll see the folks there who were representing the coalition nodding in approval that that was the correct answer that they'd given. Later on, that point is repeated, and so that became oddly, really, a condition to the approval, in the sense that there was a commitment that persons outside the community would not have access to those community services, so that the ambiguity in that phrase was clarified. And that's where it stands now. The approval that was received was an approval with that restriction. Now, the next paragraph is maybe the most enlightening thing we ever hear from these applicants about these services. It says there that KCHC has reached out to Maine Behavioral Health Care, to Penn Bay Medical Center, and to AIO Food and Energy Assistance to develop an integrated service hub. An integrated service hub. The shared goal is to ensure that all Madeline Lane residents can meet their basic needs and have access to wellness services, a food pantry, transportation, employment resources, job skills, training, and employment. The partners are also committed to nurturing a supportive community where residents can discover respect, friendship, and sense of belonging. That description, as I said, doesn't have a long life. It disappears in the final application. What follows it is a hesitance to describe what the services are. But it's not possible, I submit, to read that statement and not then ask yourself whether the community being described is in fact congregate housing, in that it is a type, I quote here, a type of multifamily dwelling including multiple individual rooms and dwelling units to be occupied as a residential shared living environment. It's true, they don't take their meals together, but as this indicates, there is a food pantry, and as the drawings indicate, the drawings of the basement of Building 2A, where the shared facilities are set up, there's a full kitchen there, there's a pantry there. There are places, surely, where people will meet and dine and collect for other reasons. Now, we know from the hearing, it's a matter of record in the case, again, the architect came in and offered a number on this, that the shared services, or we think are congregate services, congregate living services, constitute about 30% of the site floor plan. About 30% of this project is dedicated to these kinds of services. What did the planning board do with that? Well, I think I just heard someone say a few moments ago that the planning board discussed this and didn't, and decided that it wasn't congregate services, and I apologize if I don't have it right, but I thought I heard that. In fact, there was no discussion of congregate housing. There was no discussion of this document that you have on the screen at the moment. And really at this point, it was as though that 30% of the space either didn't exist or was characterized in a truly bizarre way. The characterization that the board adopted for this, these supportive service spaces was that they were professional offices. Now there again, we deal with a defined term. Can you go to that, Orion? Definition of professional offices in the ordinance. Do you need a page?
And you're now at 20 minutes out of 15. Can you give me an idea whether you can wrap this up in 10?
I can.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
And we'd be happy to extend that honor to the applicants as well. Okay.
The definition you wanted was professional offices?
Is that 318? Yes.
318?
I'm sorry. So that's the only definition of professional offices. And it is defined, as you can see, as any structure that houses the business of office of a person or persons who supply a service to the public. Well, by the time of the board's decision, the applicants had already stipulated, in essence, that there would be no services to the, at least to the general public. And this, and so this characterization of it as space to be, as professional offices, seems highly inapt, to say the least, and highly odd when you compare it with the services for which the coalition itself said this space was going to be used, for which they said it would be used. So there are a couple of things there. The first is that, and our position is that the board committed clear error of law, really, when it decided that this was not congregate housing. We think that's fairly plain from the language of the definition itself and the evidence about what was to be going on there. And the second related error was that to say that these are professional offices not only doesn't fit the definition, the ordinance's own definition, but it runs squarely contrary to the commitment that the applicant made with respect to internal use only for services. Now, in the end, the board approved the residential units as simple, unadorned, multi-family housing. To say that this development is simple, unadorned, multifamily housing flies in the face of the detailed description of services that the coalition itself provided, of the integrated nature of the housing and the services, of the really rather dramatic departure from a place that would be fairly characterized as multifamily housing. This isn't that. This isn't a simple matter of multifamily housing. This is something much different. And when they first started to talk about it in the spring of 2022, they recognized that. But when they began to recognize the problem of this being a congregate housing being a prohibited use in the 907 district, then they backed away from it. The zoning boards.
I'm gonna jump in here just for a quick second, and this is for everybody else too. We're happy to hear your observations. We're happy to hear your conclusions. I'm not happy to hear speculation on motivation. So please leave that fabrication out, because you don't know what they're thinking. You don't know the motivations.
Fair
So
enough.
for all parties, we will not brook that.
Fair enough. Without commenting on the motivation, my purpose only is to comment on the disappearance of it, the change in what was being proposed from the pre-app to the final app. That was my point. I think I can conclude here with this part of it anyway, with this. As I said, we think that those errors are errors of law. We think that they are clear. And I refer here not only to the congregate housing issue, but to the professional offices issue, and to the really the failure to reckon with the services and their integration with housing and recognize what that means. I think that someone said earlier that part of the standing standing issue here is that the abutting owners have their property, own property, in the 907 district. That this would change that district in the sense that this is more of an institutional use and it is different from any other use currently there. There is the prospect, and this board and the planning board would need to explain to future applicants why this use was permitted in a 907 district, and why some other institutional use shouldn't be given the same treatment. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jones.
The way this hearing has been conducted makes it kind of difficult for me to understand how I should respond. The role of this board in this hearing was to determine who had standing, and once we knew who had standing, we would know who had the opportunity to raise objections to how the land use board handled their proceeding. But without a ruling from this board, we don't know who is the official appellant at this point. We did hear that the Colorans, or at least one of them was present and made some comments. And so perhaps the Colorans have standing, but we don't know what their position per se is, as opposed to all the neighbors. I'd like to ask, has each of this board members seen the response to this appeal that was presented in a written letter to the board by the chairman of the planning board? If not, I would like to direct you to that. The chair of the planning board, as a result of the site plan hearing, commented on why they reached the judgments that they did. Much has been made of the fact that there was solicitation of ideas from professionals in the community, meaning the homeless community, the community of people who deal with people who are challenged in their housing. And they sought that advice, I'm sure, to obtain guidance on what types of services would make this sort of project successful. And of course, if we're going to engage in this activity, we want the project to be successful. And some of those decisions have yet to be made. They will be made in consultation with professionals about what sort of needs would promote the best opportunity for success. The planning board's obligation in holding the site plan hearing is not to determine what uses can be made in a district, but to, in their site plan process, come to a decision as to whether the activity sought is consistent with the goals sought to be achieved in that particular district. And in this case, the planning board thought that those goals would be achieved by the plan that was presented. The the facility does not have, as has been pointed out, common dining facilities or common activities among the group, but it does have space for professionals to provide assistance to promote a hopefully positive outcome. And to say that these people, that these services aren't provided to the public, we would simply say, as the chair of the planning board did, that these people are members of the public as well, and they are providing services to this group of people, and as a whole, providing a service to the public by having this facility available for people who are in need of housing. So I ask that you first determine who has standing above all, and if you think that one of the members who filed the appeal has standing, did they present the issues that that are applicable to this particular hearing that was held by the planning board? If they haven't shown a particularized injury for them, then the appeal should be dismissed. If they have established it, a particularized injury for the person or persons who have standing, then the proper issue is to remand it to the planning board for findings of fact that support their decision. At that point, we'd be able to proceed further. But if nobody has standing, there's nothing further to be decided other than that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, having heard from both sides, we would ordinarily go into our own discussion. Everybody feel ready?
I'm dumbfounded.
Or equally unready?
I'm dumbfounded. The chair of the planning committee has sent a letter to Mr. Jones explaining, no?
No, I can speak a little
What-
bit to
what
that.
is that all
So the planning board chair did write a letter in response to it, but then the attorney advised that it should probably be taken down because it's not a part of the findings of facts and conclusions of law. So that letter has been removed from the record. But it was a letter from the chair of the planning board at that point in time addressing
Yeah.
where items had been.
But it was brought up tonight that the
It
letter
was
exists.
brought up tonight, but it's not a part of the package. It's not a part of the material.
Why would he bring it up?
Well, he probably saw it before it was removed. That's probably what happened.
Okay, so our job now is to figure out with our tools at hand whether the zoning board came to a conclusion that is defensible by the materials that they had in front of them. The planning board. Gosh, every time I think of board, I put zoning in front of it. Thank you. What a bad board, the zoning board. So with that in mind, what I have been advised by our attorney, and we're not represented here by the board's attorney, not yet, but that while we have the minutes from those meetings that stand as a record of some sort, interestingly enough, those minutes don't hardly mean nothing. And that Mr. Jones is correct, that we have to deal with the findings of fact. And because we don't have the findings of fact, which would be the pile of information against which we would bounce our own questions, we are not in a position, I don't believe, to go any further.
You know, stated differently, we're an appellate body, and we can only hear an appeal based on the record in front of us. and the record is incomplete because we only have minutes, we don't have findings of fact and conclusions of law. And therefore, one alternative to that would be to remand to the planning board with some instruction as to how they can help us and provide us with a complete record on which we can make a decision if it comes back to us.
So let's outline the if it comes back to us part. We would ask of the planning board to have official findings of facts. And what would be and then thereafter, the appellants would then once again say, yes, we're interested in going further, or is it an automatic thing? And I look at both of you gentlemen for that.
I think the appellants could once again appeal, if they chose to do so.
Is it a continuation of the existing appeal, or is it a new appeal?
I don't know, all right.
It would be, so, I mean, right now, you have a hearing, you're kind of at a stone wall. You don't have your findings, facts, conclusions of law, so the recommendation would be to issue a continuance with remanding to the planning board.
Right.
Finalize findings of facts. Those findings of facts then come back before you to pick up where we left off here.
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah,
right.
so thank you. So the continuance, if we were then to vote on a continuance, that keeps the
Yes,
motion active,
yes,
but awaiting for the next step,
that's correct.
okay? And we would expect that the planning board
Mr.
would, with due diligence, do that at the earliest opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we should specify to them what matters we think are relevant, in which they can elaborate through findings of fact and conclusions of law. And one would be, what is the use that you envision for this property under the zoning section of the land use ordinance? That is, for instance, is this congregate housing or something else? Secondly, could you elaborate on your conclusions concerning security issues?
And is there a danger in sort of making out a custom list for them?
No.
Terry?
I believe so. I would, I don't think it's appropriate to go back to the planning board and ask for expanded commentary or material on these safety issues. I'd like to thank all of the folks who sent in letters and spoke up. A lot of this is very thoughtful, and you can understand where people are coming from. But once again, as we often find, especially with the zoning board, I think, we can't exercise authority beyond that which is given to us by the ordinance. And I think that is outside of, and I believe that it was taken care of by which we do have, is the letter from the police chief and the fire chief. They are the authority bodies who determine, is there a safety issue, is there a health issue, is there whatever. So to me, that's been gone, and it would be improper for us to ask for the planning board to comment on issues that to me is outside of the ordinance, and that which is contained in the ordinance has already been addressed by the fire and the police chief. So I think we're asking for too much here, again, outside our purview.
Let me just give you, for instance, I mean,
Yeah,
the planning board.
yeah, tell me more.
The planning board can come back to us and say, look, we heard from the fire chief, the police chief, we took testimony, so our conclusion that there were no safety issues.
Okay, so if we're gonna ask them, all I would ask is that we keep that very short and concise.
Yeah, open-ended so they can make
And
their own
not
statement.
into this whole
So
thing
if-
of
if-
who's gonna be
if
there
I
and
can.
who's supervising and.
So they won't be adding any additional content.
Exactly.
Right.
What was already discussed,
Exactly.
they're just populating it into the document.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
That wasn't a question, that was a confirmation, I think.
Yeah, it's not up to us to make conclusions, our conclusions, we just want them to tell us their conclusions.
And how-
right, but I just didn't wanna see a big open door, and we wanna know more. No,
No.
we don't. We wanna know what, and I'm not quite done yet with trying to improve on Bob Hall's
Please do.
request, which I think.
No, I'm just checking.
I would go beyond, I would be even more specific about the congregate housing, and direct them not just to section 900, clarify their thoughts on that, but marry that to the definition section in 300, which clearly, it seems to me from the limited minutes that we were given, which I don't quite understand why they were such a simple summary, but I searched for, it's clear that they approved this on the basis of multifamily, dwelling multifamily. So I would ask them to further clarify why it meets the multifamily, whether or not they felt it, which apparently they didn't, met congregate housing, and make sure there aren't any other definitions rolling around in there that they, like for instance, that, there is an affordable housing definition in there, and I know in some of the application, the phrase affordable housing, not homeless shelter. There seems to be, again, no matter how thoughtful, and I'm sympathetic to the thought process, there seemed to be a lot of conflation of homeless shelter and this quasi-congregate with affordable housing. And it seemed to me from the beginning, this was an affordable housing project, and just throwing it in there, in which my opinion, meets the multifamily based on the plans and what we saw that we were given in the application. I'm looking at the structure and the layout and the utility and whatever. To me, it's multifamily, but that's not for me to decide. But I want to hear from them a bit more on this comparative congregate, multifamily, affordable housing. I want them to really look at those definition sections and expound upon them, just like I
Expound upon their
expounded
process.
that whole, include all, and making sure that they're specifically using the phraseology and the definitions as contained in sections 300 and 900. So because it's true, there have been, both sides make good points. There's been sort of vocabulary that's migrated in and which is confusing, so I'd like them to hew to the specificity of the ordinance.
I think Terry has a very good suggestion
Sorry,
here.
it took too long.
And that they directed it to certain specific types of uses, because some of those uses are allowed in 907 and some are not.
Right. Like, there's no prohibition on affordable housing, that's not even in, but were it to be deemed congregate, it's not allowed, however, multifamily is. Independent yeah. Anyway, I'm not on the planning board, so I shouldn't go any further, but I'd like to hear more.
Any questions or comments from you, gentlemen?
No, I'm in agreement with what has been said. I'm very sympathetic also to the need for low-income housing, affordable housing, and so forth, and I understand what everybody's talking about. It's needed. My concern is just as a zoning board of here, we need to make sure that we know why the planning board made the decision they made as far as categorizing this particular kind of housing, so.
That's exactly right.
But are we not also allowed to look at, as I did, we were provided the entire application, so we were also allowed, even though it's not a de novo hearing, we were allowed to look at the plans and the specifications and marry them to the decision-making process, correct? Because that certainly influenced me, at least up to this point, about
Right.
what, were they given a complete picture, a detailed picture, sufficient information? To me, sufficient information is also inherent in those detailed plans and labels and the internal utility of the structures as well as the exterior. So.
Well, yeah, let me take a swing at that, in that our job, and my understanding is, that we respond to the complaints, the deficiencies that the applicants have, the applicants of this motion have brought up against it. We're not to expand any more on that, but it is logical and I would think permissible for us to look at the plans, to do all that stuff, not in a de novo
Right.
perspective, but in the perspective of, yes, they got these plans
They
which are
got
sitting
this.
right in front of us, and it shows X, Y, and Z.
And it matches what their decision. We can marry the two.
We can see the logical leap. And oh, by the way, our job is to see the logical leap or not. But even if personally or board-wise, we do or don't agree with the conclusion. So we are looking at process only.
Right.
And that's important for the public to understand, it's important for us to remember.
Yeah,
So-
we can't overcall them just because we don't like it.
Right.
There has to be, the
Right.
standard is, do they have a reasonable basis for their decision?
Right, exactly. So are we
I-
done with what we were gonna ask of the planning board? 'Cause
Well, I think
have
we
a
just need to
second category
put that
of
into
question.
a formal continuance awaiting that reaction. Anybody want to take a swing at that?
To write something up for the planning board?
To create a motion that would guide the planning board in what they need to do for us, which I would think would be just say findings of facts on the entire.
Yeah. With an emphasis, make sure that they answer those questions. Simply request more detailed findings of fact.
Bueller?
Should have my glasses.
Oh, yeah, you're handicapped today. You want
Oh dear,
Here, you can
after I went.
borrow
No,
mine.
I'm good at going on and on and on. I'm not so good about being concise, I apologize.
We're gonna give you 3 lines. You get 3 sentences for your.
The zoning board of appeals, are we making a motion or simply stating a request?
Oh, no, we're making a motion to continue to do a continuance. That would be a motion.
Okay.
Until such time when we get from.
Right. Okay, I hereby move for a continuance of this meeting contingent upon receipt of further findings of fact from the planning board, particularly focusing on definition section 300 and 907 zoning requirements. Providing clarification on the basis.
Do you want to just say complete findings of facts and?
Yeah, we want complete findings of fact, but we want to make sure they specifically address that very narrow complaint brought up tonight regarding congregate housing versus multifamily.
Versus professional offices.
And professional, oh, good
Well,
point,
that's a separate
professional
issue, isn't it?
offices.
Yeah, but now we're making a list. So
Okay.
Yeah,
trying to get away from that.
Yeah,
but
it's not-
and again, I still don't
Lump it all in
think
there.
that's the only thing we have to do here tonight, but I want to stay.
Should be,
within that.
and professional offices, not versus professional offices.
Yeah,
Right.
professional offices, right, and also public.
Well, that was the nub inside of the professional offices.
Yeah.
It's in the
Oh,
definition.
you're right,
in
right,
Yeah.
right.
We're gonna give Orion a minute to complete his handwriting. And then we'll compare notes.
Definition of 300, 907 zoning, professional offices.
Congregate housing
Congregate housing.
and,
What's the verb we're using to say, what's the verb we're asking them to do?
Well, we went
Ooh,
passive and we said awaiting the
Further
results.
clarification,
Clarification is the word.
That, yeah.
clarification.
there's a third one. Congregate housing,
Well, I brought up affordable housing,
Affordable
but that's
housing,
not,
multi-use,
that-
or
that's in-
multifamily,
yeah.
professional.
that's not in, though, the grid that tells what's permitted, what's conditional, what's not permitted. It's just that affordable housing is in the definition section, and it does appear at various times in conjunction with describing this project in the pre-application and the application. But we're only asking for,
Yeah, so let's not use the term affordable housing because that raises people's
True.
ire sometimes.
Good
and
point.
That's not applicable here.
Yep.
We don't need that here.
right. But there is a difference between, affordable housing, on the other hand, is not prohibited in 907. And again, because it has percolated up as a phrase, and there's been a lot of conflation between, affordable housing is a very specific thing. I mean, this is affordable housing, it's like a subsection of a multifamily. And it's quite distinct and separate from a homeless shelter.
Right.
Which, but
Are
I'm
you-
saying with a lot of, that has been mudged in many of the letters and
Okay.
concerns that have been raised.
I just want to make sure that you're on the course of.
No, I'm just taking everybody into the weeds.
So we can do all those items, but, you know, they don't have a findings and facts right now, so
Yeah,
in terms of
we need
anything,
findings.
it's just
We need more.
insufficient. So I think just the motion of sending it back to the planning board for a complete findings of facts, conclusions of law would satisfy those needs. They'll do their job of making sure it has everything in it that they're
And the only
concerned with.
specificity is the definition basis of congregate housing versus multifamily.
Right.
And Jeff, the way we're gonna receive this is in a letter from them?
Well, it's going to be, findings of fact will be a,
Part of the next packet or?
yeah, a very specifically designed legal document. So it will go, they will discuss it, they will verbalize it, and our attorney will then provide that 2 weeks later. And so, yes, an extended letter that we can then, and it'll be a multi-page document, because
It'll come to this board,
it'll come to this board.
and then what about everybody else?
You get public
Every,
document.
it'll be a public
Yeah,
it'll be a public
publicly
document.
dropped,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
I thought we long ago established that we couldn't deliberate until we had findings of fact from the, printed findings of fact from.
Well, that's pretty much exactly where we are right now.
Yeah.
We may have,
Like, but let's say that
Yeah.
out loud. I mean,
yeah,
that should have been here already.
but I also, I wanted to have the presentation so
I
that we had
understand. It's
the
important.
ability to take that in. You have a good feel for that?
Yeah, I do.
We have a good feel
So-
for what we just discussed?
We need to vote for it.
Yeah, there was just
Yeah,
a
we're voting.
motion, so second it and
Motion, so
vote.
we need a second.
So Terry's motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion on the motion. And voting on the motion from this side to that. Terry, yes. Bob, yes. Jeff, yes.
Yes.
Yes, okay. 5-0. We have a few little bits of, do we have minutes for?
We do have a few other housekeeping items we
To
have to take
sign,
care of,
yeah.
but in terms of this is.
I still have, I'm not clear that we've finished our business here. Just have a question driven by Attorney Jones's thing. I know we established that the Killerans had standing as a butters.
Right. That's good, because
And
that's on my.
sufficient,
Yeah.
but it was also raised, do we have to determine tonight that whether they have any particularized injury? In other words, is that business before us, and do we have to make a decision on that? And if we decided they did not, would that obviate everything that just happened and knock them out of the standing? Or do they just absolutely have standing as a butters going forward no matter what?
The
At what-
decision that they have standing means that they have the necessary potential damages.
As a butters, it's just
Potential,
inherent in that.
Hmm.
They don't have to prove particularized injury.
We've already decided that.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I wasn't clear to me, I'm sorry.
And the other, part B of Mr. Jones' question, I think was saying in that whether Mr. Murray appropriately is representing those three individuals that do have
Right.
standing.
Right.
We took as an article of fact, as an article of faith, that he was telling the truth or in a position to say, yes, if he himself were knocked out of the group, that he still will go forward, at least up to this point, with their blessing, to represent the appellant's case. And I take as evidence the fact that none of the other three individuals got up to make their own case, as that being at least allowable for the time being.
Well, their signatories are on this petition. Mr. Murray simply reading it out loud, I guess, or presenting it.
I'm sorry, ask that question again.
I'm just saying that those identified abutter, standing on the basis of being absolute and true abutters, they signed this document.
Right. So that allows you to be comfortable enough.
I don't know, Bob, you really can go to the grain on that one, but it would seem to me that is enough.
Yes, it
Okay.
is.
All right.
Mr. Jones, was there a question that you had, or Mr. Bresnahan at this point? No? Okay. Good. We're going to take care of some really boring stuff. Thank everybody for coming, and thank you for leaving quietly.
Oh, no, wait.
Terry has another
No, I
300
don't.
things to say.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
One of the issues that we have, aside from minutes and what have you, was your request to have things printed out. And it seems to me that we might as well take a proactive thing about that and say, look, each time we have a package, can we have 2, 3, 4 copies? And I'm sort of looking for a show of hands of who wants printed copies of the material.
I tell you
So
what,
that- so
rather
that
than
the
rather than that,
office-
because we might not have all the members. So the next meeting, what I'll do is I'll poll everybody. You want
Okay.
a printed copy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll get them printed,
Okay.
and then I'll
But
let
let's,
you know when they're ready.
in the meantime, for the next meeting, let's print out 6 copies
Okay.
and distribute it to all the members.
Or if you.
Of the
and-
LUO.
Of what?
But I'm also
The LUO,
mindful
is that
that
what you're talking about?
that can be very wasteful. If Terry
Or
McKenzie is
good
the only
point.
one
Because
that
the
wants
next one-
it,
yeah, the
then
next one will be-
that would be, to have all those packets sitting there and then go into the garbage. At least meanwhile, just everyone should know that you can't just go to the town, it'd be nice to give them a day or 2 notice.
Yeah.
They will print those out for us if you don't wanna spend your own,
Yeah, please,
ink
yeah.
and treasure on
It's
it.
only 350 pages, I don't know what's.
Well, this wasn't quite as bad, but I mean,
Printed
I
this
like
one.
to have the whole,
Yeah, take care.
planning board application in front of me with all
Okay,
of those
right.
documents.
Yeah.
I think
I'll
it's
be in
really
touch
important
tomorrow.
that we're looking at
Okay.
everything that the planning board looked at, don't you think?
Well, I do.
Yeah.
You know, I
And
print
that's
out-
also-
Because we're gonna have to have that
And
available.
because, and then that, to me, that's effective proof that we really did see everything that they saw, which forms the basis of our decision that they had sufficient information.
Yeah.
So I think it really,
I print out 200-page depositions all the time, so.
Yeah.
I know, so for you,
Yeah,
it's,
it's no big deal, but I don't care, I can print it out myself, or I can get it from the town.
but I just think that, the hotel thing became extremely burdensome. Maybe I'm still smarting from that.
So Max, do you need a new?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Land use ordinance?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Everybody else
I
good?
always
on-
wanted printed copies.
Do you have the most current land use ordinance printed?
Oh, yes, and that's
I know
another
you
thing.
have the most current
Does
digital.
everyone have a 2020, there's a 2022, right?
Yeah.
I only have it in PDF form. I would like to have a paper copy.
I got 2.
So let's do 6 for
Well,
LUO.
5. I know Bill.
I
Bill's
have a new
set.
book here.
Oh, yeah,
Bill's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
And we
That's a good special.
usually would get it in like a binder form or an easily that
So
we can
he
use.
he can hold his up. That's what was put together.
Yes,
I need a
exactly.
binder. I got a binder.
You got a binder.
That's
You
what
just,
we would always get.
So we're just gonna ask over in the office if we want printed copies, is that what we're gonna do? Because I mean, I don't need you
What-
to send me an agenda, I mean, it just comes up, and I just print one copy, and
Yeah, let's do that. Let's have, while the town is very kind and polite and everything, and you coming in and then me coming in, and everything,
No,
let's just have them this time around do 6.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
it's, the setup time is as much as that.
Including the entire planning, everything that the planning board was looking at when they
Yeah.
made
Right.
that
So
decision.
that one, my admin assistant's leaving for another position. She's got a higher position now. Great. Good for her.
Canvas.
Office is going to be loaded a little bit, so bear with me on the time. But
Sure.
I'll get
Oh,
it.
As long as it's in the packet that I can access through the Microsoft thing,
Yes.
I'm okay with that. I do like the land use ordinance.
I'll get you a
in
land use
Yeah,
physical
we
form,
all need to have those.
Yellow tab.
which I know I can reference that too, but it's just better.
Okay.
But as far as the rest of it, I usually can reference it online.
Right.
I
So
think
Ju-
by special request maybe.
so
Alright.
Jeff,
Yeah,
this,
so maybe we just,
I'm gonna send a follow-up email
maybe we
tomorrow.
just ask. Here's the other thing, if at least one of us
Terry McKenzie.
has that nice full printed out everything in it, then in the course of, just like I provided you what I was hoping was a useful
Oh,
document.
yes.
We would at least have that one that's available to everyone.
Yep.
And to me, it's also a bit of a CYA that there's no question, but that we were provided and looked at everything that I don't know, it's just a
We get it.
proof.
Yeah.
Am I overstating, overdoing, or?
It's important to have the right
We're
stuff.
gonna go chop down some trees, okay? We got you.
So Jeff, in this surprise letter or whatever it was that came up tonight, we assume that that information will be in the findings of facts that we're gonna receive?
Yeah, that in
Yeah,
essence,
yeah.
that will be in the
And
findings.
that's where it more properly should have been. Didn't he do
I
that
don't know.
before
Yeah.
another time? Wrote like
Went
some
this way.
letter?
He did during the last,
sometimes.
during the
Did,
hotel.
and that had to
And
be.
then we weren't allowed to
and we
look
weren't
at it.
allowed to,
But I'd already read half of it.
yeah,
Yeah.
You're still on TV.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, I didn't
So
retain any
perhaps he-
information. though, because
Suggested.
I immediately got an email afterwards, like 10 seconds later.
And
that
that he
said,
not.
do not read that.
Yep.
Anyways.
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
I remember that.
All right, so minutes.
Yeah. Now, these are the minutes from the hotel appeal.
Yes.
So those findings of facts, exclusions law, those are already done and everything else. So these minutes are literally to serve as a placeholder in the event the recording ever gets lost. That's all these minutes are.
Okay.
So if you want, I can open them up, or if you've had time to look at them, do you have questions, concerns?
Has
about them?
everyone, we have 4 views.
What minutes are we talking about?
This is,
Tonight's?
no, this is May 10th, 2022, June 2nd, 2022, and June 16th,
Oh,
2022.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the
all
ZBA
3
meetings
of them, right?
of that.
Yeah.
I
I'm done, I'm satisfied.
I checked them over.
Yeah, I looked them
Yep.
over.
Yep.
They're fine.
All right, so I await a motion on a aggregate. Bill, you get to
I
step,
was gonna
keep
say,
this
I'm
one
gonna
out.
abstain on this
Yep,
one.
yep.
Kevin's no longer here.
I can make a motion.
Would you please?
I move that we accept and approve as written the zoning board of appeals minutes for May 10th, June 2nd, and June 16th of 2022.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Bob, second. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed and all abstained.
No.
You get to raise your hand the last one.
Yeah.
So 401. Mr. Freeman is the abstention for lack of being a guilty party.
Didn't read the minutes. Not here.
I wasn't
And then,
there. All right, and I have so many things open in front of me. Is that finish up our approved minutes?
Yep, that's it.
Other
Other
business.
business, and that's it.
Adjourn. Thank you very much. 8:08. We're out of here.
Jeff, any idea?
Thank you, John.
When you think
hey,
we
I was
hear
gonna
from
say,
them?
when's the next meeting?
Any idea when you think the planning board would respond? A month?
I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do tomorrow and the next day, 'cause I'm doing findings of facts for the cell tower application. Taking that same format, and I'll be plugging everything in from this meeting or planning board meeting relative to this into it. So hopefully, at this meeting,